Hey everyone, get ready for some epic tales of petty revenge that will make you laugh and say, I wish I did that. The first story comes from a Reddit user Cannonbomb, turning the tables. How we used Unity to bring down a toxic workplace. I worked for about 5 years for a company where, by the end, I was practically suicidal from the stress and the mistreatment. When I left, I was operating as a supervisor without the pay for a shift I wasn't even on. To give you an idea of just how awful this company was, I gained nearly a $10 an hour pay increase by leaving, and I had a fraction of the responsibility. Everything was fine until the COVID nation attacked. Considering the industry I was now in, it was a given that I would receive a pink slip. The following year was the most hectic, stressful, and difficult period of my life. To spare you any unnecessary details, what transpired was me having to fire one contract agency for grossly padding my resume, only for this new contract agency to end up bait and switching me. They promised me administrative experience, the degree I was working on at the time, only to turn me around and send me back to my former employer, the one I had so desperately wanted to leave in the past. Why? They had become their biggest client because they were a respiratory medical device company and, of course, business was booming. Desperate for an income, I agreed and kept sending out resumes in the meantime. I was only back for 4 weeks, but holy hell, the place was like a war zone run by the most masochistic idiots you could ever meet. Some of the things the company was pulling to squeeze every last ounce of productivity out of us were appalling. They decided to try an old stick-and-carrot ploy. If you worked 20 or more hours of overtime each week between Thanksgiving and New Year's, you could get a $2,000 cash bonus. It probably goes without saying, but we had people so desperate for spare cash that they were literally risking their lives to get to work. We had no less than 2 winter storms that shut down the state in the 4 weeks I was there. Yet, the company found every loophole to exploit to avoid paying out these bonuses. They also lacked any semblance of compassion. I was on my way to work when my car's throwout bearing failed, leaving me stranded. I called both the temp agency and my employer, who immediately told me that if I didn't show up, it was my job on the line. I was 2 hours late, and they complained to my temp agency anyway because I refused to make up the lost time by staying to assist the overnight crew. I finally left when I got hired by another medical device company full-time, meaning I could give both the temp agency and my former employer the middle finger. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that I had made friends during my time there. Much like POWs commiserating over trauma, many of them were still working for the old company, and it was through them that I, along with so many other jilted comrades, learned about the contest. You see, the state where all this took place is small, not the smallest, but close to it. An independent business magazine for the state holds a competition for the best company to work for in state. My former employer had actually won the award about a year before I left the first time around. It had been the requisite waiting time, and said company could now reapply to try and reclaim their glory. All the naked emperors running this company were so high in their ivory towers, they falsely believed everything was coming up roses. How this competition works is that the company is interviewed by the magazine, and a link to an online survey is sent out to be disseminated to the respective employees. Thus, when my crew and I learned of it through someone still employed by these bastards, they were more than willing to become a mole. When the surveys were sent out, the former employees received one as well. It goes without saying, but we trashed this place in the survey. At the end, you could leave a comment, and I regaled them with the abuse I faced during my initial employment with the company. I detailed how, when I was forced back, I left after my former boss insulted me in an email for having the audacity to leave in the first place, all while using my newly deceased mother to prop up her own sob story. You may think it ends there, but it doesn't. That is not where the revenge comes in. Oh no. Imagine the shock when a message comes through the Discord group. Holy shit, you guys. If you open the survey in an incognito browser, you can take it as many times as you want. My crew and I had gone from slingshots to being gifted a cannon, and we were not going to waste the opportunity. We proceeded to send in negative surveys as often as we could, and our mole would forward us the HR updates. When 90% participation was reached, we halted our attack and waited. A week before the results would be announced, our mole informed us that bubbly was being stockpiled in the break room fridges. I had the forethought to monitor their LinkedIn and Facebook pages. Every other post was about the BCTWF award and how excited they were to achieve it. Assured victory was in the bag. Then the announcement came. Our mole excitedly texted us that management was in silent bedlam. The bubbly magically disappeared from the fridges. Any social media posts referring to the contest or magazine vanished, and no one was allowed to talk about it. They had obviously not expected such a pitiful defeat, but the results from the survey were so troubling that they came back to my former employer to discuss them. The company never really recovered from that point onward and struggled to remain upright. Most recently, they had to delist from the stock exchange and go back to suckling the teat of venture capitalists. Next story comes from a Reddit user, Infinite Chocolate 46. She sabotaged my reports to destroy me. Watch how I turn the tables. I work in a small department of a mid-size institution. It's the sort of office where everyone knows exactly which desk drawer you keep your candy in and helps themselves sometimes. So, it's hard for anyone to be sneaky for long. I've been in this role for about 6 months and recently started noticing weird typos and mistakes showing up in our weekly client update reports. Reports that I handle personally. Normally, I'm pretty meticulous, so at first, I assumed I was just tired or losing focus. Then one morning, my supervisor asked for a quick chat. She pulled out a printed copy of that week's report, circled random nonsense lines in red, and asked me what was going on. It looked like I had typed entire sentences in wingdings. For context, it takes effort to deliberately switch to wingdings, and it's not something you can just accidentally do. I was completely baffled. The files on my computer were perfect, and I had the version history to prove it. So, I started double-checking the final PDF after it left my hands, and guess what? The text was being changed after I submitted it, before it went out to clients. Some lines looked like normal English from my end, but by the time the PDF was emailed, there were random fonts, phrases repeated 4 times, and even a client name spelled completely backward. It was like someone wanted me to look incompetent. I told my supervisor that something weird was happening, and she agreed to keep it quiet and investigate. The next week, she set up a shared folder that tracked every single edit, along with the user who made it. Sure enough, just a few hours after I uploaded my final document, my coworker, Stephanie, opened the file under her login and started making these sabotage edits, highlighting entire sections, changing them to weird fonts, leaving them that way, and saving. HR got involved once we had the evidence. It turns out Stephanie had been telling some folks I was gunning for her position, and she decided to preemptively make me look bad. The joke's on her, though. She got written up for tampering with my work product, and I heard she's now on a performance improvement plan. Personally, I think she should have been fired on the spot. She offered me a flustered apology in the break room, saying she was just stressed and insecure. I'm still a little uneasy around her because, to me, messing with someone's work is beyond petty, especially if it risks damaging our reputation with clients. Anyway, that's the drama. I never expected to become a detective at my own job, but at least we put an end to the sabotage. Now, I'm double-checking all my files in that shared folder because once trust is gone, it's tough to get back.
Next story comes from a Reddit user, Traveling ABC. Toxic boss tried to ruin my career. Here's how I got her fired. I was desperate to find a new job after my husband and I were both laid off last year. When I was offered a new role, I knew it would be a step down from what I was doing, but the manager and the team seemed great, and that part has not changed. However, since my manager, Gary, was so busy, he basically offloaded me to another manager, Jane. I was supposed to be the connection point between my team and Jane, but it quickly turned into Jane micromanaging me. She would ask me to work through lunch, move, or cancel vacation days, call me at 11 p.m. on weekends, and order me around on phone calls. She also made nasty comments about my weight, saying I was big for my race. The list of personal slights was so long it filled 3 pages. I would talk back to her, and she did not like that. It only provoked her more. I stayed only because we needed to pay the bills. Finally, I had a mental breakdown one Friday afternoon after she yelled at me for something trivial about scheduling a meeting without including someone from her team, someone I didn't even know about. I was dealing with a family tragedy and couldn't take it anymore. I told Gary about the situation with Jane, and he was sympathetic and not at all surprised, considering half her team had quit. He immediately offered to move me to a different team under him, and I was thrilled. Well, it turned out that going to the new team didn't help. Jane continued to order me around from afar. When I ignored her emails, she came to my desk one day and started loudly talking about how I was not qualified for this role. Gary overheard and finally told her off, but the verbal abuse did not stop. After 2 months there, I abruptly wrote my resignation letter, stapled the list of Jane's offensive comments, and CC'd everyone. Gary offered a bunch of accommodations to try to keep me, but seeing how she was still provoking me from afar, I said the only way for me to stay would be for her to go, and he did not have the authority to let her go. Her manager was in a different country, and despite several HR complaints from at least 5 people, nothing was done. So I left, loudly and without shame, telling everyone exactly why I was leaving. Times were very tough. For 3 months, there were nights we would eat slices of bread just to pay the mortgage and cover emergency expenses from a health crisis and a funeral. Even after my husband found a job, we were still catching up on bills, and we still are. I spent months applying to 5 to 10 roles per day, sometimes over 20. Last month, I saw a public memo about a big shot from a former company joining the company I had just left. I used to work with this guy closely, so I texted him congrats. Let me know if you need any insights on the new place. We had a quick call where I shared some ins and outs and offered suggestions on where I thought they could innovate. After this call, he asked me to join the team as his chief of staff, and I accepted. Imagine Jane's shock when we had our first all-hands call. All the VPs and above were asked to welcome the new big shot in a giant conference room. In his speech, he breezed over the fact that I would be his chief of staff, along with a few key names. I now sat 2 levels above Jane, and apparently during the 3 months I was gone, the other half of her team had turned over. Every single person left. Gary was excited for me and said all nice things. However, Jane took the classless route and sent the big shot an email claiming I was an unqualified idiot, that I used to work for her, that I tried to get her fired, and that she suspected I lied to get ahead. She didn't even try to be fake nice. The big shot forwarded me her email and asked what this was about. I was so nervous and excited. Little did Jane know, I was a director at the big shot's competitor company and was already a level above her. So, 2 levels wasn't a big leap for me, and I had worked with him for 5 years. I had an hour-long call with the big shot and told him she was bad for the company culture and a nasty person in general. But the evidence he needed was Gary confirming that her whole team had turned over, my prior resignation letter, which was still sitting on my desktop when I logged in upon my return, and a few other nasty emails she had sent to her recent staff, which they were happy to share with us. Big Shot fired Jane on Friday.
Next story comes from a Reddit user SatisfactionTall1572. Scammed by my boss? Here's how we turned the tables. My first job out of college was at a local TV station. The owner was, and still is, the worst human being I've ever met. This guy has money, but he will cheat and lie. Anything to get out of paying his bills. When I started working there, the owner had just signed a contract with DirecTV to become part of their broadcast package. Since we were at the time purely a local TV station, this meant that we had about 2 months to upgrade our system so that we could start broadcasting to DirecTV customers in the entire Bay Area. Every day that we failed to meet this deadline meant that the owner would suffer a penalty, per the contract. Not knowing how any of this worked, the owner hired a friend of mine to come in as a freelance consultant. My friend told him that for about $15,000 he could get a system that would automate the entire process, which of course, this guy didn't want to pay. He tasked my friend with finding a cheaper way, around half the cost, and to pay for all the hardware up front and get reimbursed later. Knowing what a piece of sh*t this guy is, I warned my friend not to front the money because he wouldn't get paid back. The guy just smiled and said, "Watch me." So, my friend made it work. We went live on schedule, and the owner was happy. Then my friend went in and presented the guy with the bill. Immediately, the usual excuses started. "Oh, I'm a little short this month. Can I pay you later?" Etc., etc. Then my friend pulled out the trump card. Not only did my friend threaten to take all the equipment back and take the station off the air, but he also revealed that, in order to get the uplink working cheaply, someone had to come in every day and code the broadcast manually. It's not a terribly complicated procedure, takes less than 5 minutes, but, of course, no one else at the station knew how to do it except him. So, either the owner could pay him what he was owed, plus a $2,000 per month consulting fee, or the station would go dark, and he would start paying the penalty to DirecTV. The fucker paid fast. Instead of $15,000, he ended up shelling out more than double that amount as my friend lapped up his $2,000 per month fee for close to a year before he finally felt bad and taught someone there how to do it. Moral of the story: only thinking about short-term gain will always cost you more in the long run. Next story comes from a Reddit user, Ashley or else. Make a developmentally disabled boy cry. Lose your family. My former boss is the worst human being I've ever met. He did all sorts of things to mess with anyone he didn't like. A while ago, I was at a family event in a local park, walking with a young boy from our family who is developmentally disabled with Down syndrome, Ben. Ben does fairly well, all things considered, but he's always been sensitive to anyone making fun of the way he looks or his condition. We were just having a good time on our little stroll, Ben and I both enjoying the day. Along comes my boss, walking toward us. I'll call him Rob. I cringe at seeing him but smile and say hello to play nice. Rob, there's something you don't see every day. A pair of ugly retards walking together. Ben bursts into tears as Rob laughs and walks off. I deal with Ben and ignore Rob. I'm super pissed and trying to calm Ben down because, for a few minutes, he was totally distraught. Finally, I get Ben to focus on how he has me and a lot of other awesome friends and family, and that Rob is a stranger and what he thinks doesn't matter. We walked some more, and I saw that Rob was at the park with his wife and teen daughter having a cookout. He had apparently been on his way back to his family from a trip to the toilet when he saw us. Still super pissed, I went back to our gathering and talked to an adult cousin of mine, Jake, telling him what happened. Jake wanted to get revenge on Rob, but I reminded him that this was my boss. I didn't want Rob to know the revenge had anything to do with me because then he'd make my work life even worse than it already was. So Jake asked me for anything I knew about Rob that might help. I told Jake a bunch of things about Rob, but the relevant info here is that Rob liked to drink a particular kind of locally made beer at a certain bar. Rob had talked about having drunk there on the previous Friday night, while his wife and daughter were away visiting her family. Also, Rob had recently told a story at work about his wife's obsession with a particular little green fictional character. Let's call it Yabi Boda. Turns out his wife kept a stuffed Yabi Boda on their bed at all times. I wasn't there for the revenge setup itself because I didn't want Rob to see me, but Jake filled in the details afterward. It was basically this. Jake approached Rob and put an arm around his shoulders and tried to kiss him. Rob pushed him off. Rob, what are you doing? Rob's family is now paying attention. Jake, I am just so excited to see you, sweetie. Friday night was so amazing. Rob, what are you talking about? Jake, seriously, you're going to act like you don't remember now? I know you were a bit tipsy after all of those specific local beers at the local bar, but certainly you remember what happened later. Rob, nothing happened later, or ever. I don't even know your name. Jake, really? You were screaming it on Friday. Rob, turning red. You lying son of a... Rob's wife interrupts. Rob's wife, listen, I don't know who you are, but this is my husband. I'm sure you have him mistaken for someone else. Please just leave us alone. Jake, oh no, I'm not mistaken. We had the best sex ever on Friday night, and now he's acting like he doesn't even know me. Rob's wife, I told you, this is my husband. You're mistaken. Jake, oh maybe I am. I guess it was someone else who took me back to his place on Rob Street and had great sex with me on the bed right next to Yabi Boda. Sorry. Jake turns and walks away. Rob's wife, oh my God, Rob, WTF is wrong with you? You're gay now? Really? Already a long story made a bit shorter. Rob's wife wasn't real happy with him anyway, and this was apparently the tipping point that made her file for divorce soon thereafter. Rob frequently complained at work in the following months about how he didn't care about his wife, but really missed his daughter, and how much it sucked to live in his new place compared to his old home. Every time he complained about his lack of a home life at work, I knew he did it to himself when he was mean to a developmentally disabled kid. The best part is he never figured out I was involved at all. That wraps up our today's stories. If you enjoyed these tales, please give this video a thumbs up. Your support helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated. If you didn't like this video, feel free to hit that dislike button. Your feedback is appreciated. Thank you.